Welcome to ParaTruth. What's up, everyone? Welcome to ParaTruth Reborn. This is a pre-recorded show on 107.7 FM New Orleans. My name is Erik.
And I'm Justin.
And if you had the opportunity to listen to our first debut episode last week about vampires, well, we're coming from a place of many years of working hard at trying to at podcasting and stuff. But if you tuned in and you're wondering who we are, what we're all about, well, we're going to share that right now today with you guys. If you haven't tuned into Vampires, make sure you check it out after this episode. It's really informative, very science-based as well. A lot of fun. So as stated at the beginning here, my name is Erik. This is my cousin and co-host, Justin. We developed ParaTruth roughly 8 years ago or so. And it was a combination of a number of things over the course of 15 years, various shows that we both had.
Actually been 10 years.
Has it been 10 years? Oh,
2014.
Wow. Time is weird. ParaTruth came about after a number of years in which Justin and I both shared a show back in 2008 to about 2011, 2012. And then we separated, went our own ways, did our own shows on different networks and stuff. And then in 2014 came back and decided to kind of combine our two separate shows into one, and it became ParaTruth. So a little bit about myself and what that show actually was to kind of give you an idea of where I come from. So I have been podcasting for around 15 years now, 15, 16 years. I work in the film world. I have a film degree. And so I spend a lot of time doing like arts and editing and crafting videos and content for the radio. And back in 2012, I started a show that was really representative of my faith. So I'm a Christian. I was born again in 2009, and I created a show called Forgotten Truth. Now, Forgotten Truth was a show designed to break the veil between a Christian perspective of the paranormal and the practitioners of other religions, occults, and secular thinking. It was basically an experiment to see whether the religious, quote unquote, the occultist and the scientist can have a fair, productive conversation about the paranormal without tearing each other down. Because in my line of work, I'd seen over and over again how we would constantly butt heads as to what the truth was and who was right, who was wrong. And it was kind of frustrating. And I had great success on Forgotten Truth regarding just people from various walks of life coming together, having full respect of each other, while still talking about the things that we just absolutely love, and that is the paranormal. So with that said, around 2014, we came in, and part of, ParaTruth was Forgotten Truth. So that's where mine comes in and where I stand.
And I'm Justin. I've been doing this as long as Erik and got into the paranormal at a very early age. Loved doing the different things that comes with being in the paranormal, Ouija board, tarot cards. Then when Erik and I started our first show, we were talking about paranormal stuff, and I really wanted to do a show on it. So we did research and got that going. And then, Parasite Radio was the incarnation of my show before it became ParaTruth. And it was basically what I was doing well before. And, I come from a more secular view. I've followed the Christian faith as a kid, and as a grown-up, my mind has grown a little bit. I feel that there is something way more than just organized religions are telling us. So I come from it from a more secular standpoint, and that's how ParaTruth was intended to be. After we revamped ParaTruth and became ParaTruth Reborn, that's where we wanted to keep it, because we've swayed both ways, both of us, in being in ParaTruth. And so we are sticking to our original guns and coming from two separate views, and eventually at least coming to an understanding of where each view comes from, and at least having a respect for that.
Right. And so one of our tagline, actually our main tagline for ParaTruth, is that we define paranormal. And this is something that took many, many years to finally accumulate and become the definition to help us define what the paranormal is. So we dive headfirst into each topic, exploring legends, history, and firsthand accounts, which guide us on a journey to expose the myths and find the truth behind all paranormal events. Now, we've dedicated time and our energy into learning about the mysteries that are beyond the scope of scientific understanding. And as our curiosity grew, so too did our passion. So, being scientifically minded, we take each topic or case that we study and filter it through logical thinking and practical application, along with our own personal beliefs and faith. And then ultimately present that information to you guys as clear and precise as possible. And of course, we want you guys to join in and chat with us as well. So we will be in the chat, even though this is a pre-recorded show, we will be in the chat on YouTube, especially. And we'd love to get you guys' ideas, your thoughts on the topic, and if you have any personal beliefs regarding them as well.
Yeah, I don't have anything else to add.
Perfect. All right. So with that said, we are going to begin today's actual topic, and that is about UFOs. UFOs, I mean, you guys know there has been a lot of sightings, a lot of videos popping up left and right on social media about these. They look like craft of some sort of aircraft flying overhead. They are circular, they're in triangle form, they're cubes, and they make no sense. They define explanation. Even our governments are coming out and saying, yes, there's something weird there, but we can't explain exactly what it is. Now, whether or not that's true is yet to be shared. I think perhaps our governments know way more than they let on, but nonetheless, these things are becoming more and more popular. We are here in 2024. Since 2022, things have ramped up, and it's only a matter of time before these craft, whatever they are, either come lower and allow us to get good, clear video or photo evidence, or we get the opportunity to see whatever or whoever is flying those crafts.
The interesting thing that I find fascinating about UFOs is when the government declassified the term UFO and it became UAP. Mm-hmm. So unidentified flying object to unidentified aerial phenomenon. And it makes a lot of sense, because it's not necessarily always a craft that's visible. If you think of the Phoenix lights, all that was visible was lights. There was nothing that could really be seen by the naked eye. And a lot of the encounters that we're seeing in videos are, as of recently, are showing that kind of phenomena where it's lights in the sky. You can't really see a craft, and it's either blinking lights, it's several lights in a row that you can obviously tell are not stars because they're much brighter than stars look to us. And so that was the one fascinating thing about all of this. Even though I understand the reasoning behind it, it's like, does it really matter what we call it?
Probably not. But here's the thing that I find interesting, because a few years ago, more than a few years ago at this point, we were talking about UFOs. We probably cover this topic of UFOs and extraterrestrial life several times a year, because it is so popular and it is something that's constantly changing and adapting over the years. Mm-hmm. There's more and more things happening. There's more suspicion or more ideas of what these things are. And I think going with the aerial phenomena instead of unidentified object is an interesting choice, because object is this thought that it's a physical device that is in the air, something you could touch, that you can fly yourself even. Whereas a phenomenon can be maybe something more spiritual or energy wise. Maybe it's something that is a portal of some sort that we're seeing. We've had a number of people join us on the show and tell us that what we're seeing on these UFOs are actually just portals to other dimensions. They appear like objects to us flying, but in reality, it's a space-time continuum that lets you move through space and time in some sort of wormhole. So the fact that they chose to use the word phenomenon is, I think, really intriguing.
Well, and here's the real question too. Like we're seeing new and increased sightings of these particular things more and more, even more so, I would say this year over past years.
Mm.
And the question really is it because we're all finally getting outside again after the COVID and all that stuff? Is it we have smartphones in more hands, so we're capturing this stuff? Something that has become of recent is the invention of AI and the use of AI in videos, photos, sound, and so forth. Is it AI that these people are using in their videos to create this?
Right. And that's a great question because it's getting harder and harder. Sorry, I'm sorry, guys. My
The Hellcats.
the Hellcats are driving me crazy tonight. So that's a great question because the more that we watch like things like TikTok or Instagram, I mean, you and a lot of our friends are sending me all kinds of photos and videos of things that are questionable. They seem pretty legit, but there's little moments where I'm like, this doesn't seem right. This doesn't float right, or doesn't fly right, or doesn't walk right. So we're getting things about UFOs. We're getting things about cryptids. We're getting ghost captures that people are asking us, like, what are your thoughts on this? And the fact is, it's getting harder and harder to discern what is real that actually exists out there that we're capturing, and what is just simply artificial intelligence creating or manifesting these same videos and making us believe something that really we shouldn't, just isn't real. It's just all fictional. And I think as we move forward through time, artificial intelligence is going to become stronger and stronger, and eventually we're not going to know the difference between what is real and what is fake. And I think there will come a point where if it isn't as clear and defined as what artificial intelligence shows us, then we simply may not believe the real things that we are capturing, and instead we'll only believe what AI is showing us.
Right. Well, and so that is one particular thing of what these things could be other than extraterrestrials is AI. And the one particular video that I had sent you recently with Hellhound, whatever it was, I was almost convinced that, that it looked really real enough. And then you noticed the one thing that I didn't catch,
Right.
which is why I always send it to you before I'm even like mentioning it to anybody, because there are going to be things that I don't catch that you do, and vice versa. You've sent stuff to me where I'm like, yeah, that's not a ghost. That's somebody just moving way too fast.
Right.
And stuff like that. But what in all of our research over the years, in your mind, what is and you've brought this up with the gateways or portals into other dimensions. But in your mind, what is maybe a logical explanation to what these things are?
I mean, that's a good question, because you want to, especially being having a scientific mind. Those of us in the paranormal who study this kind of things, most of us, we come from a standpoint that is kind of skeptical, right? We want to be proven wrong. It's easy to prove ourselves right. You just simply see something and believe it, and it's done. But to try to prove yourself wrong, well, that's different. You look at an object and you think, all right, well, that's not a UFO. So what is it? And you go down the list and you check off everything. It's not AI. It's not a star. It's not some light phenomenon. And then you the further you get along, the more you start to think like, okay, well, this is unexplainable. What else could it be other than possibly some sort of extraterrestrial life? So with that said, though, many of these videos that we're seeing, and with UFO content, it's usually videos rather than photos. So that's why I'm using the word video here specifically. But with the videos we see, there are a number of explanations because a lot of these are happening in areas where there are airports or military bases, and so we could argue that these crafts that we're seeing are actually just military jets of some sort of undercover, yet to be
Experimental.
revealed, experimental, type of thing. There are a lot of things that we see at night on videos. How many like lights we see over the mountains that just seem to float down in a weird way and then disappear behind the mountains. That could be flares being dropped, from an airplane flying further above the horizon, and that usually happens around military bases. It could also be parachuters who are jumping out in the dark. We've seen a few videos where there are lights coming down, they're descending, and they're twisting around each other, and they look like they have this intelligence to them. But in reality, people can do that too. You can actually, skydivers can manipulate their bodies to move and to float and look like they're flying, like literally flying rather than falling, and give this illusion. Not that they're purposely trying to give an illusion for individuals who are out there looking at the sky, but it just happens to be something that they're doing and other people misinterpreted it. So then beyond that, though, I mean, sure, there are light phenomenons happening. We've heard about ghost lights that tend to happen in swamp areas or near railroads. And that's been debunked in some cases to being headlights that are reflecting off of some surface miles away. But something similar could happen in the atmosphere as well. It's just a reflection of some sort of light elsewhere. And it appears to be some sort of, extraterrestrial vehicle that is flying around town, but maybe it's just some sort of gaslight or something like that. But again, when it comes to logical thinking, you have to really compare the options to the videos that we're actually seeing or what maybe you witnessed yourself and think, okay, could this be what's happening? And if you can't test it and debunk it, then there's a possibility what you're saying is just simply unexplainable.
Right. Well, and I'll tell this story because I've told it multiple times. My wife, Shelly, and I were in Sicily. I believe it was when we were on our honeymoon. And we're out on the balcony in our hotel room, and we're just looking at the night sky. We're looking at the city, and off in the distance, there's a bay. And I see these lights like darting and swooping. And I'm like, Shelly, get out here. Get out here. Look at this. And she looks and she's like, what is that? I'm like, I don't know. But it almost seems like UFOs. Mm-hmm. And to me, they were UFOs because I couldn't see what they were. I couldn't identify them. And then a little time goes by, and then all of a sudden, a seagull flies over the top of us. And she goes, Justin, they're just seagulls. I'm like, well, how am I supposed to know? I didn't know that there was seagulls out there. The other instance that I've had, which is unexplainable to me, was I was driving to work one day. It was dark out, and I was driving north, which is the direction that our particular military base in Minot is. And I see this light shoot up from the ground and shoot away from me. Couldn't explain it. Some people could argue, oh, it's a meteor. Yeah, I could understand that meteor coming from the horizon, but then why would it change direction and shoot in another direction? That doesn't make sense to me. Can't explain it. Not saying it's aliens or UFO. Could have been a military operation and, a jet just took off. But from a non-aerial area, landing area, is questionable to me. So I've had those instances, but I can't explain just that one. The other one I obviously could because my wife was there. If she wasn't there, I would have been like, totally UFO. I have no clue what it was.
Yeah, absolutely. I recall you telling me about the one that shot up from the horizon and went off, like shot off somewhere. But it's been a while. Do you recall like when it actually disappeared as it left? Was it just a blip and gone, or did you see it traveling away for quite a while?
I saw a quick stream of light and then nothing.
Okay.
As it left.
Okay. And it wasn't super like windy that day or anything like that.
Not that I recall. It's been a long time though.
Yeah. I'm just like, it's like one of those things where, again, we want to try to debunk it. And like, I'm like, well, what could it have been? A flare that someone shot in the air, super windy, and wind blew the flare away and it just looked like a flash and then just died out. That's something that obviously you'd have to test in the right environment, but it's hard to get the right environment without, you're basically sitting around waiting for the wind to pick up. But I've had my own encounters as well that have been interesting. One just a few weeks ago that I told you about, which happened right over downtown Cleveland. And this one I think has been debunked. I think I debunked it, but I don't know because I didn't have I tried to get video of it, and unfortunately, by the time I got to underneath it, it was gone. But there's an airport, lakefront airport, downtown Cleveland, and right above it, there was this. I was probably about a good 10 miles away, and I saw it kind of hovering over the buildings. And normally, I would think, oh, it's just the helicopter, but it was huge, and then it got small, and then it got huge again, and it would kind of change shape like that. And sure, one could say, well, it was flying sideways and then it turned and its back or front was facing me and then it turned again and you could see the side. So big, small, big, small. But it was pure white. I didn't see any lights on it. There were no blinking lights. There was nothing that kind of signified it was an airplane or a helicopter. Even when I started getting closer, roughly 1.5 miles away, I could still not figure out what it was, even though I saw it hovering between the buildings. And again, once I got there, it disappeared. However, a few days ago, I was actually driving along kind of the same route, the same highway, and I was much closer to downtown. And I saw a jet take off from Lakefront Airport. And it was bright white, looked just like the object that I saw. But like an airplane does, it takes off and it either keeps going straight or it does a U-turn and goes whatever direction it needs to go. But typically it's flying higher and higher and higher. So even though there's a possibility it was just an airplane because they looked similar, I still have to question, why was it floating above the city? Why didn't it just fly off in whatever direction it was supposed to go? Why was it between the buildings at a time and not above it? And again, that's just one of those instances where I don't know,
Yeah. And there is one other instance where we both witnessed it. And then I think you mentioned it and then Shelly mentioned it. And then last year it happened again where we were watching the fireworks in my backyard. We saw this thing, had no clue what it was because I hadn't seen any announcements about anything. I don't think anybody else had because they're like, what the hell is it? And we thought it was a UFO. Come to realize it was a drone. And that's something to start thinking about when you guys see these things in the sky as well, is drones have become much more popular and much more accessible to the public, where you could be seeing something. It doesn't necessarily have flashing lights on it, maybe a light. And then it's moving in a very weird particular way that you've never seen before. Start debunking it. I think that's the one thing as paranormal investigators we can't preach enough is debunk, because as Erik mentioned earlier, we get all of these different things from people saying, oh, it's this, it's that. And then we look at it and we're like, yeah, it's not what you think it is. And Erik, you've had this instance in some particular groups where they're
Yeah.
like, no, it's you're wrong. That it's exactly what we're saying it is.
It's incredible how many people are just susceptible to a photo without taking the time to actually debunk things. Like there are things that I've seen that are so clear as day, a natural cause. And I will point out every little thing, and people are like, "You're wrong. It's a ghost." Like, bless you. Okay, it's a ghost. But it's just how some people are. Like they're and there's nothing wrong with it. Like you want to, we all want to experience something paranormal, something weird, something out of the ordinary, right? I mean, I'll be honest. Like, if to this day I'd never experienced a haunting or a demonic oppression or something like that, I would be very skeptical if anything spiritual existed. But I both unfortunately and fortunately have had many, many, many experiences with such beings and entities, or spirits and entities, that it's simple fact that for me that these things exist. And if things like ghosts, things like demons, things like um, various gods or goddesses or something like that that might exist, then why not the cryptids? Why not alien existence, extraterrestrial existence? Why not all these other things that we are over here looking for? And Bigfoot's a big one. And that kind of fits right in here with our UFO thing, because there's been a lot of discussion over the last 2 or 3 years as to whether or not it's actually a cryptid, an extraterrestrial, or a forest spirit of some sort.
Yeah. Well, something else we've been seeing recently is people claiming sightings of portals. Portals in the sky. Some people have been showing videos of portals right in front of them, that they've created these devices to open a window or a portal or a doorway into other realities or other parts of our reality. And, are they fake? The majority, probably, yes, they're fake. I think you've debunked quite a few. Some are really questionable about what exactly is going on. If it is AI, if they're manipulating with Photoshop is it After Effects?
Yeah.
Uh,
Photoshop or After Effects.
and or does it have to do with UAPs, UFOs, how they're coming here, or are we perceiving them as crafts and they're actually portals, as you mentioned earlier?
Right. And that's something that just, it's still hard to, we can't prove it. We can't test it unless we're actually there. We can't, it's even hard to believe it unless you see it in person, because some of the portals that we have been seeing around the world, there's a handful of people who claim to have seen it. I mean, if these portals are as huge as they look on social media, this should be worldwide news. This should be spreading like wildfire. And it isn't. When you actually look it up, there's so much skepticism regarding it, and so many different people trying to debunk it. And everything from, your normal everyday paranormal investigator to meteorologists who are there saying, nope, that's not a portal. It's actually just this, it's some sort of light phenomena from rains and storms during the time with sun, shooting through the clouds, creating this kind of image that looks like a portal. And unfortunately, it's one of those things we don't know. Now, obviously, there's been a lot of big discussion regarding portals ever since the particle accelerator was first started. And there's been a lot of big things that seem to have shifted and changed since that happened. So whether or not, let's just say, for example, that they are real, that these portals do exist, we have at least some sort of, I guess, idea, or at least we can assume that they started because of this accelerator being turned on. That just kind of opened up a space-time continuum to allow us to see things that normally we wouldn't see.
Now, you mentioned it being brought up that it's light being hit by rain and whatever. Let me tell you about a story about Roswell.
Yeah.
Now, granted, I'm not saying the government's behind this, and it would only be questionable if they said, like in the Roswell incident, that it's a craft, and then they're like, "Oh no, it's a weather balloon."
Hmm.
Completely different situation. And the UFO things that happened, was it 2021, 2022?
Yes, 20. I think it was 2022.
Okay. Where even the government was like, we don't know. We think it's China. China's like, we don't know. We think it's the US. And it's
Right.
like, I think our governments really need to start communicating, stop worrying, and understand what is going on in our world today.
I mean, it just, yes, but I think it also comes down to, uh, in what way can we navigate away from this idea of extraterrestrial existence? We don't want people to know that there's something beyond our planet because there might be mass hysteria. People are going to freak out and stuff. I mean, as if people aren't already loading up with firearms and things just for the heck of it, at least in the
Right.
US. But you know, how much worse? Like people would be pointing fingers. Oh, that person's an alien. This person's an alien. We've seen footage of people claiming someone else as some sort of extraterrestrial. So it's very possible that that's their way of diffusing this idea or thought of extraterrestrial life by simply pointing fingers at someone else, another nation, another government, another individual. I mean, they even said that there were some students that were out there messing with their own little craft that they developed, this experimental craft. I mean, okay, I guess. I mean, it's possible. But then they kept popping up 4, 5, 6 different places, not only around the country, but even around the world. Uh, but you know, here's the thing though. The big difference between something like that, in which we're just, you know, we've got the news telling us, and we got people taking videos and sending them to us, and that of 1947, the Roswell incident, is that many of these videos we personally can't see full proof. They're usually just these little blurry images that we're seeing, unfortunately. The cool thing about 1947, and part of what I like about that story, is not only was this particular craft, uh, which was supposedly first an alien spacecraft, but then later a weather balloon, but that craft, whatever it was taken to Dayton, Ohio, and has since been stored at a garage there, locked down by two people, two armed guards at the front of it at all times. Weird for a weather balloon, right?
Mm-hmm.
On top of that, there's this man known as Jesse Marcel. Many of our listeners might have heard of that name. I had the opportunity to speak to Jesse Marcel Jr., his son, back in 2013 with my podcast back then, which was Forgotten Truth. You guys heard about that earlier today. And the cool thing about Jesse Marcel Jr.'s story is that not only was he coming as a first person witness, but he was able to explain the various days leading up and following that whole event. And he sent pictures or put pictures in a book of his that showed his father holding this material, this metal-like material that would fold and bend like foil and yet was indestructible. And another piece of metal of some sort that had inscriptions written on it, various shapes and whatnot. These are things that can't really easily be debunked, but they're also things uh, that can't be unproven. We know that, according to Jesse Marcel Jr., the military came. By the way, Jesse Marcel was the first person to
First responder.
get on site for the crash. He took some things home, some pieces, and the military showed up at his door, confiscated everything from him, and that was it. He was locked and key. Never heard more about it. So that's some suspicion, right? And we see that a lot when it comes to this kind of spacecraft UFO thing that's happening.
Something you didn't mention in the mass hysteria part of it is people questioning their faiths. It being someone who is a devout Christian, if they announced that aliens were real,
Mhm.
or say extraterrestrials made themselves known without our governments being involved, would it make you question your faith at all?
Not in the slightest bit. Not in the slightest bit. Uh, a lot of there are Christians out there who will say, "Oh, extraterrestrials don't exist because the Bible doesn't mention them," or they say, "Well, humanity is a unique species. Life is unique on Earth. Life doesn't exist outside of Earth because God created it that way." But just because God doesn't say something doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Again, going back to Jesse Marcel Jr., I'd asked him a similar question. He too was a Christian, and I asked him, like, how do you deal with the question whether or not God created extraterrestrials or life beyond our planet that is a thinking, breathing entity like ourselves?
Mhm.
And he said, to sit here and claim that God created something that there's no proof of would be to put the idea and words into God's own head of something he never actually did. But to say he didn't create life beyond our planet is to restrict God of his creative ability and power, because he is creator of the universe. So you're kind of like in this, you're in this little kind of spot in the middle where you can't say one or the other whether or not these things exist. But I will tell you that if they do, it doesn't change the truth that I know. It just means that there was something else out there that he made it maybe earlier before us, maybe at the same time, maybe, and this is one of the big things that I've talked about or shared, was that some Nephilim, at some time, many of you probably know of the Nephilim of the Bible, of Genesis, and maybe at some point, knowing that these Nephilim were gods to men, they were heroes, renowned, that they had the ability to create things that humanity couldn't, because these were basically angel human hybrids. They had abilities, they were giants. Then there's a possibility that either before or during the flood, there was some knowledge to them. They had some knowledge of it, and they were able to create some sort of craft to escape the planet before the flood destroyed everything and everyone. And they have since been living their life outside of Earth's atmosphere, somewhere in space. And what we're actually seeing come back are these Nephilim beings. Now, again, is that a stretch? Probably, but it's another example of the ideas that are out there within this world. There are people who strongly believe that extraterrestrial beings, alien entities, are actually demonic entities. And there has been significant evidence to prove that too. Back in 2000, and I think it was 2012, I think 2012, you had the opportunity to speak to David Rufino, who is the author of Unholy Communion. I think it's Unholy Communion.
It was 2014.
Was it
when we
2014?
started
Okay.
ParaTruth. Yep.
Now, remember, I was in LA at the time. I couldn't join you, but I listened to this episode. But so you talked to David Rufino, author of the book Unholy Communion, and he had a number of evidence stacked up on various cases he'd worked as a pastor, in which he would talk and work with people who were being abducted by aliens or oppressed by aliens. And he found over and over again that when he was able to speak to these people about Jesus and cast out these aliens, provide these people with the power of Christ and the Holy Spirit, these extraterrestrial beings would disappear. These people would no longer become abducted on a regular basis. They would no longer be oppressed. They would no longer see things in the sky. And so that evidence shows us maybe extraterrestrials are just a mask for demonic entities. And the fact that the proof is out there, that he was able to show, like, oh, here's this alien entity, and cast it out in the name of Jesus, and it would leave. I mean, understandable. Most of creation is subject to the name of Jesus. Now, humans are one of those who get the opportunity to say no and not accept that reality, because we were given free will. But the fact that these entities, whatever they were, left, that's interesting. And that's not to say, again, because I want to cover all bases, that all entities, all extraterrestrials are in fact demonic, but it's
Thank
possible.
you, because I was going to bring that up.
but it's possible that these particular entities were just masquerading as extraterrestrials and therefore doing their work, keeping people away from God.
Yeah, I mean, it could be either, both, or somewhere in between.
Right.
We can't determine right now because we're limited in how we can do our research.
Right. But I will tell you though, like, all you have to do is look into some ancient history, and you will see all kinds of writings, all kinds of drawings which depict some sort of spaceman or some sort of craft looking thing in the air. I mean, even in the Holy Scriptures, in the Holy Bible, the book of Ezekiel describes God descending from heaven, and the way he describes it sounds like a spaceship. Now, again, I'm not going to say that he was descending in a spaceship, but at the time, Ezekiel didn't have the proper words to explain what he was truly seeing. So he explained them the best he could in a human way. And I kind of want to go through that because it's kind of pretty cool. So Ezekiel 1:4-28 says he talked about living beings, 4-winged human-like beings with 4 faces, straight legs, and brass feet. Okay, brass feet is interesting. There were wheels. There are 4 wheels that appear to be made of clear and yellow jewels, and they can move in any direction and always move with the living beings. So this is something free-floating that seems to be mechanical and moving. There was fire, and the fire looked like small torches that glowed brightly and flashed like lightning. And then there was a throne, and the throne of God, the throne that God sits on was like a crystal plane that sat above the living beings. And it's very interesting, those descriptions, because it very well comes off as being some sort of mechanical object that was flying down. And again, whether or not that's what he was seeing was something mechanical or just trying to describe what he was seeing about angels and the spirits and trying to explain to us what it looked like to him. I mean, again, we can't ask Ezekiel, unfortunately.
Right.
But we do see things like that are represented throughout ancient history, where there are little things that people are talking about or drawing about that kind of relate to, or very much relate to, what we know today as extraterrestrial life.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen a lot of people bringing up hieroglyphs, even with saying this or that. There have been people that pointed out in the painting of The Last Supper that there is some hint to UFOs and even Atlantis in the background. It's stretching, in my opinion, and people could have altered these images that they post. But yeah, I mean, not just paintings and description, or hieroglyphs, but descriptions, because our human minds are so limited in how we can describe something. Who knows?
Right.
That in the Bible specifically, yeah, it all could have been a description of what they were seeing as a depiction of God, but it's one of those things that makes you question things too, which is a whole other topic, I think.
I mean, it's true, and there are a lot of UFO hunters or people who are looking for an explanation for extraterrestrial existence, and they will point to that particular scripture to show that UFOs do exist in the Bible. Now, again, I'm not going to go that far. I do think that description is a stretch for what we know today as UFOs, because again, I mean, I personally, how many times, Justin, have I struggled on our show to even come up with the word cool? And I'm like lost. I'm like, I don't know what the word is. And you're like, is it the word cool? Yeah, that's the word, man, that I've been trying to figure out the last 30 minutes. So imagine me trying to explain something like that. It's going to be wild. But, nonetheless, there are obviously a lot of people who will go the distance to try to prove the existence of something, even if they have to tweak or manipulate a little piece here or there in order to get that vision to come to life for others.
Absolutely. So the last part of this, to wrap it all into one big bow, is anything that we've talked about today good enough evidence to say that it is aliens, or that even that aliens exist?
Come on now. I can't. No, I can't say that. Like, until we have hard evidence, like, I mean hard evidence as in, like, a craft lands and alien beings walk out of it. We've heard about the Greys and reptilians, and we had someone on our show, actually, which maybe we'll re-release at some point here, who talked about visiting the Galactic Federation, right? And she had
being in communication with them,
yeah. Yes, constantly. And that she even went so far as to fly on this particular spacecraft with one of her closest extraterrestrial friends, and he would let her fly around and stuff like that. Like, it's a really, really interesting episode, and hearing everything she had to say kind of has you wondering. But with that said, like, to sit here today and say, yes, it's 100% for real, that they exist, I don't know. It's, I can't make that decision without a little more proof. But I will say that I will argue that something does exist out there, because I don't believe, mind you, scientists tell us that the universe is continuously expanding, and it's been expanding for billions of years, but they don't know where the universe ends, and they technically don't know where it begins. And so, as far as we know, the universe as we know it is infinite. And if you're telling me that we are the only life in the entirety of the infinite universe, I'm hard pressed to say I don't believe it. There's something else out there. We know that I know, not everyone else necessarily, but I believe angels exist. I've witnessed them. I believe God exists. I've witnessed him. They live in the heavens, whether that's the space as we know it, as the stars are considered a spot in heavens, but there's also belief that there's heaven beyond, or I'm sorry, space beyond outer space, and that is the throne room, or the heavens of the angelic beings. And could all these things that we're witnessing just be spiritual entities that are in physical form, or taking some sort of form and showing themselves to us? Maybe. Could it be portals? Maybe. Could it just be military craft? Maybe. We just keep on going and going and going, and we won't know until, I think, they actually show us themselves. Because I don't believe the government's going to be the one to show us.
Well, and I've brought this up to you multiple times on ParaTruth, even that if people released video, even news organizations released video of Jesus coming from heaven back to earth, and they're reporting on this, they're saying it's real, plenty of people would be like, no, that's CGI. You can see right there that he's not floating,
right?
It's all background and whatever. In your opinion, outside of a news organization airing it on TV, let's just say, what would it take for people to believe that it's real? Would it be our governments saying, you know what, we have been lying to you this entire time, aliens are real, we've been in communication with them, we're really sorry, they're wanting us to start announcing it? What would it take for people to actually believe it? Because what we've talked about through this entire thing is how people can manipulate things, and
right.
It would be a lot for people to believe it.
You're right. And it's hard to say. I think for many people, it's going to be seeing it with their own eyes in person, not on TV. So, for example, if the president, whether the United States or any country, or whatever, anywhere, is on a stage and says, this is such and such, an extraterrestrial from outer space, and that being or person walks up to us, or walks up to him, we might be like, okay, this is a live event, this is really happening. Of course, many of us will question whether or not it's a suit, whether or not someone's just dressed up and it's all being faked. But I think for many people, it's just going to be, it's going to have to be something drastic. Like, I mean like alien invasion type of drastic.
them appearing to pretty much everybody and being a part of our culture.
Or coming to destroy our cultures.
Well,
and the world
right.
itself. Yes, either one.
Independence Day type stuff.
Yeah, either one. But you know what? Then again, it's just hard. You know, it's like you had mentioned how people, you know, if Jesus were to come down today, people would not believe it, even if it was real. And unfortunately, that's just how it is. That's how it's meant to be. In fact, Scripture is very clear on it that there's going to be a kind of a blinder on people when even God comes back, and they will be in that situation where they see but don't believe. And I think it'll be the same way with extraterrestrials. We can see them, literally hear them, maybe even touch them, and still refuse to believe.
All right, so we're coming to the end of this. Any final thoughts before we close it up?
Yeah, make sure you wear your tinfoil hats because things are getting crazy.
I encourage everybody to make sure you're doing a lot of research. As we mentioned, debunk. I cannot encourage that enough. Regardless if you're doing paranormal investigations, you're looking into the sky, you're doing cryptid hunting, please make sure you are debunking what you're hearing, what you're seeing. Get actually really good video of what you're seeing, because there have been so many times, and we've mentioned this on our show, I can't even count how many times, that all of these clips are blurry. Nobody else is reacting to them. Maybe make sure you have somebody with you. And people will try and explain away the blurriness, why somebody's not reacting the way that they should, right, all of the stuff. But I encourage you to please do research, debunk, make sure you're talking things through with people, not just arguing, because we've come across that too. And in the end, it is your guys' decision on what you believe. But take our word to heart, do research yourself, and in the end, come to a better conclusion than that it's absolutely real. Because in the paranormal community, you have to have a certain level of skepticism in anything that you're seeing.
At least in our opinion.
Well, I think in a lot of the people in the paranormal
absolutely. I will say that we've worked with a couple of individuals who would fake evidence.
I didn't want to bring that up, but yes,
I mean, it always comes up.
I agree.
But like drawing off of what you just said too, if any of you have photos or videos, whether of UFOs or anything else that is cryptid or spiritual or whatever, please send them our way, because I love taking a look at that stuff, and I really want to see real stuff. If I can debunk it, you know, we'll see. But if not, then maybe we even share it right here on air.
Yeah, we would love to discuss it on air and get other people's opinions and comments and concerns as well. Talk about it in the chat for our videos as well. We got a lot of great stuff coming up for you. I am working on guests. We are rapidly going into the Christmas and Thanksgiving season already.
Crazy. And, which, by the way, sorry to cut you off, I hope everyone had a great Halloween.
Oh yeah.
Well, our favorite time of year, obviously.
No blades in the apples or candy and all that good stuff.
Whoa. You didn't have to go there.
It's something we actually haven't discussed. It should be our next Halloween episode.
It's something that has never happened in my lifetime. So
well,
I can't imagine.
The urban legends is basically what I'm talking about.
Right.
Yeah, make sure that you're having a great season. We've got so much to talk about. We always do a Christmas and New Year's episode. And I had the opportunity to talk to Michelle, and they do a New Year's episode as well. So make sure you're tuning in every week to ParaTruth Radio, to United Paranormal Radio Network and 107.7 FM New Orleans, where we will be pre-recorded streaming every Sunday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. Until then, my name is Justin.
And I'm Erik. Peace.